consecrated power that I hope to pass on to all of you.
Hey everyone, welcome back to your nerdy show. I'm your host, Spoiler Master. If you're a fan of Severance, then you're probably as intrigued by the mysterious world of Lumon Industries and its enigmatic founder, Kier Eagan, as we are. Today, we're diving deep into one of the more puzzling aspects of Severance Season 2, the curious and disturbing story of Kier's twin brother, Dieter Eagan. This particular tale, brought to us through the infamous fourth appendix in the Lumon Compliance Handbook, raises a lot of questions, and we're here to break down everything we know, or think we know, about Dieter's fate and the implications for the Eagan family. So let's get into it.
Dread, malice. Each man's character is
Kier Eagan's history. Before we talk about Dieter, we have to understand a bit about Kier himself. Kier Eagan, born in 1841, is the founder of Lumon Industries, the central company in Severance. We've been given snippets of Kier's backstory throughout the show, like how he grew up suffering from illness due to his parents' close biological relationship, which, let's face it, sounds a little ominous. Over time, we learn how Kier went on to build Lumon from the ground up, transforming it into the powerful corporation it is today. But like most great leaders, Kier's origin story is far from simple or straightforward. We know he's a man of principle, but there's an underlying darkness in his narrative, and the story of his brother Dieter is a perfect example of this.
Lodgings of my mother's womb I shared with another, a twin brother who was called Dieter.
Introducing Dieter Eagan, Kier's brother Dieter, is first introduced through the fourth appendix in Lumon's Compliance Handbook. This is a document that was written by Kier in his final hours, and it's so sacred within the company that it's forbidden on the severed floor. The fourth appendix reveals a lot about Kier's family, but it also offers a glimpse into the darker, more twisted elements of the Eagan legacy. In the appendix, we learn that Dieter and Kier were twins. They had a special bond, which is why, according to the story, Dieter convinced Kier to leave their home and live in the wilderness, specifically in a place called Woe's Hollow. Dieter essentially persuaded his brother to live as paupers in the woods, away from their family's wealth and status. Kier, being devoted to his twin, followed Dieter into this strange new life, but their time in the woods wasn't long. Something about Dieter's behavior disturbed Kier deeply, and this eventually led to a horrific event that's hinted at in the appendix.
I was looking at him when his eye came out. It popped.
The tragic death of Dieter Eagan. So what happened between Kier and Dieter during their time in Woe's Hollow? According to the fourth appendix, it's suggested that Dieter did something that went against the strict principles of their family. He spilled his lineage upon the soil, which is a very cryptic way of saying that Dieter masturbated in the wilderness. Now, before we get too deep into what this means for the brothers, let's pause for a second. The Eagan family is clearly portrayed as incredibly rigid, steeped in tradition, and obsessed with maintaining their legacy. Kier's father ran an ether mill, and Kier himself would later go on to build Lumon based on his own set of values, to do something that could be seen as defiant, like masturbation, which in the Eagan worldview is an act of indulgence and weakness, would have been a direct rebellion against those values. So it's not surprising that Kier would react strongly to this. What happens next is chilling. The fourth appendix describes how, after Dieter's act, something horrendous happens to him. His left eye pops out and his scalp falls off like moss. This grotesque description of Dieter's punishment is bizarre and unsettling, suggesting some supernatural or mythical quality to his fate. And as if this wasn't enough, Kier is so disturbed by his brother's suffering that he goes to the nearby waterfall at Woe's Hollow to drown out Dieter's screams. Now here's where things get even darker. The appendix doesn't explicitly say that Kier killed his brother, but it certainly seems to imply that he did. Kier mentions that he had no choice but to listen as his brother spilled his lineage, which might be a euphemism for the act that led to the gruesome punishment. But the most telling part is when Kier says he drowned out his brother's cries by going to the waterfall almost as if he was trying to escape the horror of the situation. In other words, Kier may have drowned Dieter in the waterfall, putting an end to his suffering in a way that could also be interpreted as a mercy killing. So, did Kier kill his brother? It's left up to interpretation, but the fourth appendix certainly hints that he may have.
Path of Kier and Dieter, and reached woes.
The fourth appendix, a parable for Kier's values. Now let's take a step back and look at what the fourth appendix is really about. Is it just a recounting of a tragic event in Kier's life? Or is it serving a larger moral purpose? In many ways, the story of Dieter's death seems to be a cautionary tale, a moral lesson Kier wants to impart about the value of order, discipline, rejection of self-indulgence. Throughout the appendix, Kier describes his brother as chaos whore and criticizes him for disrespecting their family's legacy. Kier demonizes Dieter's act of rebellion as a betrayal of their heritage. In contrast, Kier himself is portrayed as a figure of high moral standards, someone who always carried himself with the utmost principles. In the world of Severance, these principles are sacred, and any deviation from them, especially something as sinful as masturbation, is seen as a threat to the very foundation of society. It's important to note that the story is written from Kier's perspective, so whether or not Kier is exaggerating the events or even telling the truth is something we have to question. The entire fourth appendix seems to position Kier as a symbol of order and discipline, with Dieter serving as a foil to his character. The underlying message: work hard, respect your family's legacy, and don't indulge in what Kier would view as the immoral act of freedom.
I mean, seriously, that's actually the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Helena's reaction. Is Dieter real? But here's where things get even more confusing. In the series, we meet Helena, an Eagan family member who reacts quite differently to the story of Dieter. Despite being a part of the Eagan family, Helena laughs off the tale and even mocks the part where Dieter is punished for masturbation. Now this is strange because if Dieter were a real member of the family, you'd think that Helena would take the story a lot more seriously. After all, she's part of the same family, and a story of such brutality and tragedy would likely hold some weight for her, but instead, she laughs at it. This leads to a fascinating question. Was Dieter even real? It's possible that the story of Dieter is purely fictional, something Kier created to serve as a parable about his own values. If Dieter never existed, then Kier could have used his death as a metaphor to explain his philosophy on discipline, family, and the importance of working for the greater good of Lumon Industries. Alternatively, it's also possible that the Eagan family doesn't talk about Dieter's story because it's too painful or too controversial. After all, if Dieter was indeed sacrificed by Kier to build his legacy, the family might not want to acknowledge that dark chapter in their history.
You know, we often laugh at what we don't understand.
What does Dieter's story mean for Severance? So, what does Dieter's story really mean for the world of Severance? It's a fascinating addition to the lore, adding layers to the Eagan family's already complex history. But beyond the tale of a tragic brotherly relationship, Dieter's story serves as a larger commentary on the themes of the show: control, discipline, loyalty, and sacrifice. Kier's possible role in his brother's death underscores the lengths to which he went to maintain his vision for Lumon Industries. If he truly did kill his brother, it's a dark reminder of how much he was willing to sacrifice in his quest for order and control. At the end of the day, Severance is all about questioning the balance between autonomy and conformity, and Dieter's story is another example of that struggle. Was Kier's strict adherence to his values worth the cost, or did he cross a line in his pursuit of power? As we dive deeper into the world of Severance, we can only hope that more pieces of the puzzle will fall into place, and we'll get the answers we're all craving.
Chapter.
Kier and the thieving nanny.
Our nerdy thoughts. So, what do you think about the story of Dieter Eagan? Was Kier responsible for his brother's death, or is the tale just a metaphor? And what does it all mean for the larger narrative of Severance? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked this breakdown, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more Severance theories and deep dives. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
What the heck, I'll laugh anyway.